Kagiso released their December PMI results a little earlier today and are saying that the index remained in largely positive territory. Here to unpack the numbers with me is Theo Force, a specialist consultant at Kagiso. Theo, thank you so much for joining me today. November reading 52.9, December 51.7. So clearly slightly softer coming to the fore. And looking at your brief here, it's all about the employment index.
Well, back to our top story, and that's, of course, Naspers' results. We're joined on the line now by CEO Koos Becker. Koos, good afternoon.
Hello, Stephen.
Koos, well, this really looks like a story of emerging markets continuing to do well despite the market downturn, because you have exposure to some fast-growing economies, and that really has paid off for you in the past year, it looks like.
Stephen, we got into them more by luck than design.
Well, you said you got into them by luck more than design, but going forward, it looks like your focus really very much remains on emerging markets. You have made more acquisitions over the past year, internet company in Poland, of course you have an internet company in Russia as well. Is the focus going to remain on emerging markets going forward?
I've heard that in the South Africa of today, you can be classified as colored simply by looking colored. Is this, in point of fact, true?
Well, I can give you a quote, which may seem amusing, but rather humiliating incidents that occurred in our country when the Department of Census started reclassifying people. They hauled people of the trams in the mornings out of the bus queues and took them up to the Native Commissioner's office. And some of the tests applied to tell a man that he was not colored was trying to pass a comb through his hair. And the comb stuck, he was told, "You're a Kaffir." Other people whose noses were a bit flat were told, "You're not a colored."
Behind the firm, continued refusal of African women to accept passes?
Well, the passes have been enforced in South Africa for a very long time among the men. And it has become very clear that the pass system in South Africa is the basis of forced and cheap labor. Now, to impose such a system on the African women is to create hardships. Firstly, African women will have to produce these passes on demand. If they fail to do so, they will be arrested in the streets, they will be stopped at stations, they will be stopped as they visit one another in the locations, and if they haven't got those passes, they will be immediately arrested and brought before the court. Now, African men who value their women just as any other people value their women, say what will happen to their children.
36,5. Oor hoeveel vryheid beskik die media in Suid-Afrika?
Our policy is one which is called by an Afrikaans word apartheid. And I'm afraid that has been misunderstood so often. It could just as easily, and perhaps much better, be described as a policy of good neighborliness, accepting that there are differences between people. But while these differences exist, and you have to acknowledge them, at the same time, you can live together, aid one another, but that it can best be done when you act as good neighbors always do.
Well, we felt that it was a legal trick, or we didn't know whether it was legal then, but we felt it was a piece of trickery and against the spirit of the Constitution.
But I think you're putting the standard of morals very low if you reckon that we are going to go on supporting apartheid just in order to keep our servants.
Goeienaand. Die staatspresident, meneer P.W. Botha, sê hy het besluit om 'n landwyse noodtoestand in te stel.
Goeienaand. Daar kom tye in die geskiedenis van nasies dat 'n keuse gemaak moet word tussen onaangename alternatiewe. Die keuse tussen oorlog en 'n oneerbare vreesagtige vrede is so 'n voorbeeld. Die besluit om 'n noodtoestand af te kondig, soos wat ek vandag gedoen het, verteenwoordig ook so 'n keuse.
What is expected of us? What should we do? We should defend our country in the best possible manner.
Welcome to the first special report on the Truth Commission. The Commission's first hearings were held here in the East London Town Hall, and it's been a week of raw emotion.
as the leadership has placed a great deal of the blame. All human beings are moral creatures.
So I interviewed Robbie Jansen about the fact that Jimmy Blue had won the Sama Award and that Robbie had been nominated for a Sama. And he had a lot of very interesting things to say. And the response from the editor was, no, this is not too controversial because now Robbie is, maybe he's dissing the Sama Awards. He said they're the Sema Su Awards, it's sort of popularity contest, it's how many records you sell. But it's, for me, you know, even though maybe there was a bit of Skinner sort of involved, and it was, for me, a very entertaining story that broke from the sort of stereotypes that one has of these musicians. You know, very often what we only get are the press releases of, you know, the record labels. View of what these people are, and I was trying to humanize. I mean, I'd sort of, you know, I'd read many Robbie Jansen stories, working at the Cape Times, and Sandile Dikeni had commissioned or written a couple of stories about Robbie, and we published stories about Jimmy and these people. They were sort of like, it was old hat. I mean, there was nothing really new about these musicians. And here was the target market, and I thought, well, we could do something more interesting and creative and humanize and give a sort of more of a backyard, homegrown sense of these are real life people living in these communities with things to say, faced with real issues, and how can we break from those stereotypes that have been generated as a result of the apartheid system, where you have this division and segregation and essentially playing to a white audience. So I thought we could do something quite creative and interesting. Unfortunately, the editor, who was from Bloemfontein, had a very different view about how the world works. As far as she was concerned, there were very strict categories of people. A black person, for instance, wasn't of any interest to the target market. So no matter what a coloured musician says or does, this was a coloured target market, and a black person had no reason to be talked about in that target market.
Surely these are people who have talents and they would be looked up to by those
surely 10 years after democracy, this is a debate that one shouldn't be having in a newsroom. This is something, racial profiling, as far as I'm concerned, is a form of discrimination. And I've made allegations of racial profiling to the Human Rights Commission. I've made the allegation to the Labour Court. I complained to the manager of the VP Courant, the Nationale Pers. Complained to the manager, and his response was to schedule an evaluation meeting in which my contract and performance would be evaluated. So I sat there waving my article about Jimmy Dludu while I was now being evaluated, and they were very unhappy with my performance.
But the two things have nothing to do with each other.
I couldn't find the connection. So here's the human resources manager, the editor, and the manager of the division. And now we're talking across purposes, because I'm saying, well, I'm sorry, I'm in no circumstances am I prepared to pursue this relationship any further unless we sort out this story about Jimmy Blue and Robbie Jansen. And they say to me, well, you know, we're unhappy with your performance, and if you're going to take that attitude, you can take your things and leave right now.
But your performance in which way? About writing the article? Nothing else about your performance?
They raised all sorts of issues. They said, this is, I mean, I can quote the human resources person said, "What am I doing on a Friday night at the West End talking to someone like Robbie Jansen?" Aren't I contradicting myself as a Jew?
What's that got to do with anything?
Well, you see, this is the thing, is that as far as I'm concerned, I should have been reading my Talmud and my Torah on a Friday night, and I shouldn't be writing about things that don't concern me. So there's an allegation of anti-Semitism now as well, because as far as I'm concerned, what I do on a Friday night is between me and my Friday night.
Are going to make this Lewis case disappear.
No worries, Jack. I know my shares in a resolved group of companies won't influence my decision in any way.
I have plenty more to influence events around here with our recent financial services merger.
Speaking of which, how much is my partner's stake in Momentum Metropolitan worth anyway?
We are just partners. Nobody will suspect a thing. Besides, we have Max Sisulu on our side. As head of Sanlam, we control Naspers, which controls Media 24, which controls the division which fired Lewis.
The public must never know what music legend Robbie Jensen had to say about Jimmy Lulu. It would result in the collapse of the carefully crafted political dispensation,
which allows us to earn enormous profits while forgetting about truth and reconciliation. Lewis had no right to question our failure to come clean at the TRC.
Besides, his beliefs are not genuine enough to be considered by somebody as esteemed as me. Your version of events must always be preferred.
So we understand each other then. Nobody will ever know the truth about apartheid. The evidence will be fixed to reflect a different truth. A truth in which our corporation is the winner and continues to make profits regardless.
It's been a pleasure doing business with you. Our company shares clients, partners and investments in several key areas, including technology, psychometric testing software and labor dispute management.
Yes, our ongoing business relationship must continue. Psychology's magazine will provide all the details on how you can win over the public trust. Do your bit and I will do mine.
Opinion and attitudes means...
I just want to give you an example of what's in this filing sheet. Just to give you an example of what this case is about. Statement of the facts that we relied on to establish evidence came. At Media 24, a system / policy exists in terms of which it caters to and maintains previously segregated areas by printing newspapers that comply with racial profiling and thus uphold racial divisions. The above discriminates against applicants and that inter alia compliance with him with the above policy is contrary to his religious and political views. So there's an allegation that essentially there's a system of policy or system of segregation at Media 24. I can testify to the fact that if you walk into the VP Courant newsroom, you'll find a very interesting situation. It's the multiracial mecca that P.W. Botha invented, where you have white people working for white titles, colored people working for colored titles, and black people working for black titles. If you're black, you can't write for a colored title or a white title. If you're colored, you can possibly work. There's a sort of a
small overlap.
You know, is a colored person a white person? You know, there's this kind of like weird thing of like, what is white or colored? My first-hand experience was that I was categorized as a colored. They said, well, you know, this guy's obviously thrown his lot in with the clear. So we'll let him sub the colored newspaper, and he can supply a story about a colored to the colored target market. And in fact, we'll be so bold, we'll let him sub a story for the black target market, but he's not allowed to write stories for the City Vision, the all-black newspaper. You know, this is their multiracial utopia of we're all one nation. As long as we maintain our distinct racial profiles, and the people who kind of fall in between the gaps, those are the people who essentially show up the contradictions of the system. This is the problem of apartheid. It never worked, because what happens if you have a black and coloured parent? What happens if one of your ancestors is white? It's ridiculous that we are still faced with this, that it's legal, that they're allowed to essentially get away with a form of racial segregation in their newsroom. Well, no, this is what the New South Africa is all about. It's about own affairs. This is what we fought for, own affairs. What's mine is mine, what's yours is also mine. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we hold on to our last vestiges of power in the Cape. And I really believe that I wouldn't be having this problem if I wasn't living in the Cape. I think any other province, this problem would have gone away. Only in Cape Town do we have the last vestiges of apartheid, with this attempt to essentially hold on to a particular racially charged, sort of segregated worldview, where I've got a letter from the TRC saying that no, this company didn't even bother to make a submission.
Lights are on, but there's nobody home. That's right.